Hey everyone, you're watching Conversations in Pop Culture, and I am your host, Andrew Davis. And before I introduce my guest, I would like to remind everyone that you need to support and financially support what you love, whether it is this show, my guest, a wrestling promotion, or corporate media. I personally do not care as long as you are supporting what you love and what you want to see get made more of. But enough about that, because I have with me legendary professional wrestler, Brian Milonas. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. What's going on, Andrew?
Nothing much, nothing much. I'm excited. I just had Billy Starks on a few minutes ago, and she's fantastic. And I
Very cool.
obviously thoroughly enjoy you. And there's a bunch of cool stuff that you've done. And I really do want to talk about somewhat of the last 4 years. But before we do that, I feel like there's a few rivalries we have to talk about.
Sure
And,
thing.
there's some very interesting things that you've done in wrestling. And I think you might be the only one who's done this. And where I want to start is talking about Rick Fuller.
Yeah, Big Rick. Yeah, I
Because
had I
you
wrestled
did
Rick.
some,
Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah, ton.
Let's just say this is a story. I'm going to let you tell it. I believe you are the only person in professional wrestling to have a match that featured John Cena and Vince McMahon on the
On
Indies.
yeah, and yeah, absolutely I am. So, well, I guess there's two of us, me and Rick Fuller. Um, yeah, it was wild. So, yeah, the setup, and it's on my TikTok too. I got the story on my TikTok at Brian Malone's on TikTok, trying to do that, all that stuff. But yeah, so John Cena's dad, John Cena Sr., the illustrious Johnny Fabulous, co-promoted a show with Chaotic Wrestling, and it was a benefit show. I want to say for like the police association or something for like Newbury, Mass. So John did the show as a favor, and he was the referee of my match, which was the main event. I was the reigning and defending Chaotic Wrestling heavyweight champion, and I was defending the title against Rick Fuller. So John is a super cool guy. We already kind of had familiarity with John because he used to, when he first got on the road, he would come and stop by the Chaotic Training Center where I trained. He would stop there on his off days and train with us. So, he was already like a super chill guy and familiar with us. So he, in the afternoon, sort of lays out like the finish of the match, like very meticulously. I didn't think anything of it at the time though, because like, yeah, he's a WWE champion. He probably just wants things a certain way. But little did I know. So as far as I know, the only people who knew what was about to happen were John, the owner of Chaotic Wrestling at the time, a guy named Jamie Jemikowski, and then John Cena Sr. were the only ones that knew Vince was going to be in the house. So we do the match or whatever. We get to that finishing sequence. I couldn't tell you what the actual finish that John laid out was at this point because so much obviously happened. I probably couldn't told you 5 minutes after the match either. But so we double down or whatever. I'm getting up, and I see somebody get in the ring, and I turn around, and it's friggin' Vince McMahon. Like it feels like a fever dream at that point. I'm like, I don't even know what the hell is going on. So I'm just like, you can see it in my face. So the actual footage of it, and that's the only place you could probably really find it. The actual footage of it is on my TikTok. You can see it on my face. Like I don't know what the hell is going on. So Vince is like yelling at Cena's dad because I had knocked Cena out with the belt, and then Vince comes over to me and goes, "Are you the heel or the baby face?" And I go, "I'm the heel." So he grabs my arm and raises it, and then you see my mouth is like on the mat, like I can't even like I'm not even like playing it cool, like yeah I'm this badass. And Vince is my guy, like I'm just in awe of the situation. You can see us talking, and the conversation kind of went along the lines of like, "Hey, what's next?" He said something along the lines of, "I'm gonna slap Cena, take an FU, and I'm getting out of here." And that's what he did. And then Cena like waves me on like and is just going FU, 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 which because I was the finisher at the time, it wasn't the attitude adjuster, it was the FU. And he gives it to me, and I roll out of the ring, and I grab my manager, Cherry Payne, and I grabbed her and I hugged her and I said that was the greatest effing moment of my life. So, which it was up until that point. So
Let's even talk about this, because there have been a few moments in New England history. Anthony Green was in one of the only matches with the Bella Twins outside of WWE. And this is
yeah,
also in that vein in a lot of ways. And so what was that like for you? Because it's a great moment. It's fantastic. Anytime John Cena, is your referee, it's cool on an indie show, because
yeah,
just to even have that is super cool. And then to have Vince McMahon, and the guy who basically made sports entertainment a thing, brought WWE to where it is today,
yeah,
despite everything that's going on with Vince and then what happened with him and all the hush money, which nobody really cares about for the most part. No offense to anybody here, but to even be part of that, because that is a very cool moment. And it
yeah,
looks like a wrestling thing. And like I don't know how to explain it. Like it's like a fangirl thing, but you could see the crowds like, oh my God. Like you could
yeah,
even feel it in the crowd. I saw it on YouTube and I'm like, wait a second.
yeah. People thought it was the picture because I used to just post a picture, and for the longest time, people thought it was fake. People thought it was like I photoshopped the picture for the longest time because it seems like a totally fake story, right? If this was something that there wasn't video evidence of, nobody would ever believe any of it in a million years. It sounds completely made up. Vince McMahon on an independent wrestling show. He's appeared on. I think he did like a Smoky Mountain show, maybe, or something like that, or appeared on Smoky Mountain TV, and then maybe did something in like the USWA. But other than that, like Vince has only ever appeared for his company. So you can count on one hand the number of appearances he's had outside of WWE. So it's wild, and I just happened to be the lucky schmuck that was in that spot that night. For me, I mean, for a lot of reasons, like very cool. Obviously, there's some historical perspective and context to it. For me at the time, though, I'm thinking like, hey, maybe this is the ticket to ticket to getting a job. So I was booked as an extra for TV. Maybe it was like the next week or so. Like Raw was in Boston, and at the Boston Arena. I don't know if it's like this now, but it used to be like there was one hallway, and it was the only way in and out. And so at the end of the night or whatever, I just sort of positioned myself in this hallway because I know like Vince has to come this way, and I have an in to talk to Vince McMahon. I can, I have a reason to conceivably speak to him, which it wasn't the first time I'd spoken to Vince. I've been to TVs before as extra talent where he's like thanked us and stuff like that. So I've definitely had minimal interactions with Vince McMahon prior to that, but nothing of any substance other than the in-ring interaction. And so, sure, he comes walking down the hallway just as I thought, and that after Raw goes off the air, and so I go, Mr. McMahon, and he kind of looks at me like, who the hell is this guy talking to me? And I go, I don't know if I don't know if you remember me, but I was in the ring with you on the independent show, I think it was a couple weeks later, a couple weeks ago. And I said, it meant a lot to me. Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate it. And he kind of like cocks his head and just goes, oh, well, you're welcome. And then, he just walks off down the hallway. Now, I don't know if he actually did this or if this is how I've just concocted the story in my mind all these years later. But, in my mind, he did the strut away from me as he said, after he said, you're welcome. So, but
So
for me, yeah, I thought it was going to be my ticket. So he walked away and my dreams crumbled right in front of my own eyes.
but to even talk about this though, because one of the things that it was filmed and it exists, and what people I think don't realize, and this is how I view this show, is if I record an interview, it's there forever.
Yeah.
And so, that piece is very much embedded in, chaotic history and this rivalry and your career. And it is a very legendary moment. And a lot
WWE shot it too, by the way. WWE has footage of this. I have friends there who have tried to get them to find it, unarchive it, and um, play it, and it just didn't work out. I also tried to broker a deal between Chaotic and Ring of Honor when I was a Ring of Honor for Ring of Honor to be able to use the footage. Because to me that was like, man, I could have been the hottest thing in pro wrestling because I was just about, if I could have brokered that deal, I would have been on Ring of Honor television in the ring with Vince McMahon. But it just, wasn't able to be worked out because of Chaotic can't like sell the footage or anything like that. They can't monetize the footage at all. There were some deals signed, but it would have been super cool. I can tell you that much. It would have that. Now you want to talk about pro wrestling history? When I was a Ring of Honor, if they could have used that footage and had Vince appear on Ring of Honor television with one of their stars, like even if it was archived footage that they got from the Indies, that would have been something.
Yeah, and then obviously, I mean, this just created a massive rivalry between you and Rick Fuller, and it's a very cool moment in wrestling, this moment. And then you and Rick Fuller for years, pretty much. And this the rivalry started a little bit before this, but really I feel this was the start of it. And then there's been every type of match between you and Rick Fuller. There's been steel cages.
Yeah. I think my chest has finally the flesh on my chest has finally healed from all the chops I took from Big Rick over the years, and we settled our differences at one point, and we were tag team champions of the MWF, the Millennium Wrestling Federation, for like, I don't know, they'd run like a couple shows a year, but I think we were the tag champs for like 4 years. So I think we defended the titles once.
And so it's kind of crazy because I just think it's such a cool piece of history, and every wrestler, wants that piece and wants something that can't be done. And that's your piece. And I think that's what makes you such a cool individual. And it's not that it changed your career, but it's one of those things that if you're a fan of wrestling, doesn't every wrestler want to share the ring with John Cena and Vince McMahon? And there's, I think, 4 or 5 other guys on, wrestling collectively. It's kind of like if you're on an independent show and Randy Orton RKO's you. I mean, it's kind of cool in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's guys that had long careers in WWE that never were in the ring with either one of those guys, let alone both of them at the same time. So I'm definitely lucky. I feel very fortunate. It's a very cool thing. I think I still got some years left in me here, but I'm definitely closer to the end than I am the beginning. As I sit here 20 years in. But yeah, there's things that you take and you hold on to, and for me, it's that's my World Series ring. That's my Super Bowl ring. That moment.
And then there's a few other people I want to talk about that really, I think, embody your career before we get to the last 4 years. And that's Tommaso Ciampa, because you and him have torn it up. And this is like beginning Tommaso.
Yeah.
He's great. This is not NXT good. This is him when he's just starting to get into his prime, I feel. He's starting to rev up the engine. And the two of you have had a bunch of matches. And I think people forget that Ciampa was on the indies and really put in the work. And the two of you have had some serious, crazy matches. And so what was that like? And then I guess looking, 2020 is always hindsight, right? But even seeing where he's gone and the fact that you got to wrestle him before he did that and knowing what he had in the tank, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, Tommaso is probably one of the closest friends I've made in wrestling. Haven't been with him literally since day one, since the day he started. We trained together, and but yeah, we had a number of matches. We had like a couple separate feuds. So I want to say his last match before he got signed the first time to WWE, which a lot of people don't realize. And then he had got released, and then he came back, and then we had a second feud. It was kind of a crazy story with that one. So, Tommaso's parents would come to the shows, and his family and his brother, they'd all come to the shows. So, we're having this feud or whatever, and we concoct this idea to, hey, why don't I beat up your brother? Like, that'll be a cool moment. Like, so I was with these guys, the Empire, Sledge, and this guy, Scott Reed, and they attacked Tommaso and tied him up. And then we were in Lowell at this venue called the Polish American Veterans Club, and I snuck in the back door, and attacked his brother. Now, the night before at the wrestling school, we worked on all this, but Tommaso and his brother, Brad, thought it would be best not to tell their family what was going on because they were worried the family would telegraph it. So here I come from behind and I attack Tommaso's brother in the crowd, and Tommaso's dad starts like throwing punches at me. And like, so I get the hell away from him. Tommaso's dad was older or whatever, but I don't want to be punched for real. And I get him in the ring. Now he's being restrained by like security and police. And so like I'm in the ring, Tommaso's tied up. I have his brother beaten up. So now I start and I look out and I go, "Come on, you old bastard." So now like, he's like gets rubbed up again. Now, Tommaso had friends in the crowd who almost jumped the barricade until they sort of came to their senses of like, this is pro wrestling. This is not real. But Tommaso's dad was just defending his son so vehemently that he couldn't, here's Brian Milonas, who I know, who's been to my home, who I've spoken to, who is my son's friend, who is also a pro wrestler. And he just in the moment couldn't get it together, and it was just it created like somebody called a friggin' ambulance, like cops were there. It was nuts. It was a wild scenario, and like this was the early days of like YouTube and stuff like that, and me and Tommaso begged and pleaded Chaotic we got to release this footage, and the owner was so worried about like Tommaso's dad like suing. He's like, "My dad's not going to sue." He's like, "Well, I don't know that. I have to protect myself." And I'm just like, what is he going to say? That he went to a pro wrestling show and his son's friend, who's also a pro wrestler, beat up his son as part of a storyline, and he got so fooled by it that he assaulted me. Like, well, what is he going to sue? But yeah, and I say it's a funny story. I love Tommaso's parents. I love his dad, great guy. But yeah, see Tommaso from where he started and the matches we've had. He documents his journey on his social media a lot. I'm glad he does now because Tommaso is the hardest working human being I've ever come across in pro wrestling. Like he just doesn't ever quit. He doesn't have the word quit in him. He's had so much adversity, so many setbacks. He got hired by WWE, he got released. He found his way back. He moved up to Missouri and went to Harley Race's school. He traveled all around. He turned down Ring of Honor and bet on himself at one point. Left guaranteed money on the table because he didn't think they were treating him, fairly and giving him what he's worth. And when he went to NXT, he was just supposed to be a guy who came there and put people over. Wasn't supposed to be the guy who was the face of the brand. He wasn't supposed to get to the main roster. And then his story is so remarkable. And I just love and respect him so much.
It's really interesting. I mean, the DIY stuff was great. The War Games with him was great. All this stuff. And then what he's doing with The Miz. I mean, I think, he now, I'm sure somebody said to him, you're going to have an easier road now. And now he, in my opinion, is in his honeymoon years where he's about to have a lot more fun in wrestling.
Yeah, it sucks he's out right now. He's going to be out for a while, but, it sucks that he's hurt, but I just know he's going to come back and he's going to be better than ever because that's just what Tommaso does. He gets hurt, he comes back, and he's better than he was before he got hurt.
No, I think what he was doing with The Miz was brilliant. I really did, and I think it was fantastic because I think he has nothing left to prove. And I think that it's time for him to have a lot of fun in WWE, be a bad guy, because it's fun to be a supporting character sometimes. It's fun to sometimes be a sidekick in a comic book because you get to do a lot more stuff. But if you're getting paid like you're a superhero, what do you care? Especially after he's done, because he basically made NXT legit.
I can tell you, Tommaso does care, and that he's not going to ever settle for that. Like he is just, again, he is the most, in the best way possible, the hardest working and most relentless human being I've ever met. He just, if somebody thinks that this is what his ceiling is, he's gonna shatter through it. Like he's
Oh,
gonna
no, I'm not saying it's his ceiling. I'm just
yeah.
saying that if he had 6 months of that, I think it'd be a great sport and have a good time. I mean, who doesn't
Yeah.
wanna be the bad guy and be like an asshole like The Miz for like 6 months?
Yeah.
Yes, but I digress. I would love to have that job. I would have such a good time. Oh,
Yeah,
it's great. It'd be good. We all wanna do that for 6 months. But
absolutely.
anyway, enough about him though, because another guy I wanna talk about is Brian Fury with you as well. And that was the CW New England title and the heavyweight title. And that's another rivalry that I think a lot of people know in New England. And, those are some crazy matches between the two of you. And that's old school
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Brian was somebody who was funny, like, we definitely butted heads a lot, especially early on when he came over to Chaotic. At first, we did not get along, but it's funny. Sometimes people you don't get along with, um, you end up having the best chemistry with, and we're working with Brian was always very easy. It was just very easy chemistry. We thought alike when we put together matches, and just once we got in the ring together, the chemistry was just super easy, super smooth. Brian was a fantastic wrestler. Just as an in ring performer, from this area, Brian's pretty high up there. Could just do it all. Could be a heel, could be a baby face, could have a technical match, could do a hardcore match, whatever you needed Brian to do. That's what he was. So yeah, I had great chemistry with Brian, and a lot of fun. I think probably the most fun match I ever had with him was we had like some street fight where we, fought all over the building, outside the building. It was a really good time.
And then another one before we get to what I dub as the New England Five was with Chase Del Monte. And
Yeah.
that's a long rivalry. Years in the
Yeah.
making. I mean, heavyweight championship stuff, number one contenders, several title matches. I think the two of you had at least like 15 title matches with each
Yeah,
other.
we've feuded a number of different times in Chaotic. I think at least for me, and I think it was for him too. The first show I ever main evented was with Chase for the new Chaotic Wrestling New England Championship. Um, you know, yeah, we were married. I feel like from storyline perspective for years and years and years and years, and Chaotic would just always kind of go back to the well. I think back to the cage match I had with Chase, and then ending his year long title reign. Yeah, it's funny. I talk to him now. He's now the owner of Chaotic, and I talk to him a lot now. And I said, man, we ain't getting any younger, so we gotta get one more in there for the road here before we both hang them up. But yeah, geez. I mean, yeah, heavyweight title, New England title. I'm positive that I've had some sort of tag team title match with him involved in it. So it's crazy how many times we have probably wrestled. I mean, a lot of us in Chaotic were like that because we had that core group in Chaotic for a number of years, and we were all around the same age. We all started around the same time, and Chaotic was running, every 3 weeks. We'd have right on the dot every third Friday. We'd be at the Lowell PAV, and it was fun. I think it was probably fun for the audience too to watch all of us sort of grow up together essentially too. We all were. People don't realize. You look back at some of those crazy cards that me and Chase would have wrestled on, but you got, and probably some of the people you're going to mention here soon, but some of those cards were insane. And you think about like what that would cost for like an indie promoter nowadays, and we just all happen to be training at the same place or just end up in the
It's
same place
interesting.
at the same time.
There's a saying, and I mean, I know you're in the New England area, so I'm gonna be mentioning a dirty word here, the Yankees.
Yeah.
But during the Derek Jeter years, it was one of those things where there was the core four, and the New York Mets were trying to do that, and obviously their battle plan didn't work. But that's very much what Chaotic was. You had a core
Mhm.
of guys, and then you had components coming in and out to some degree, like every other wrestling promotion. But it's a very interesting thing when that occurs in a wrestling promotion, because when you have a core and everybody's gelling and working together, tag teams gel together and sometimes opponents do, but when a whole unit is moving collectively and everybody on the card knows what they're supposed to do and it works, and your match then leads into another match and then it sets up the vibe for the audience, you have a really cool thing. I mean, right now, Wrestling Open is like that in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. And that's the only, there's other promotions that try to do that and they do an okay job, but it's not the consistency, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we had this really unique environment where, we had the school tied to the promotion. And we really acquired a lot of people just came to our school because of our ties to WWE. Like the owners, my trainer, Mike Hollow, and the owner, Jamie Jamakowski, like they worked really hard to establish a very strong bond with WWE. So that helped strengthen the school, but it also attracted, people who, if you want to be a wrestler and you want to train in New England, if you wanted to get to WWE, really the only choice was chaotic at that point. For better or for worse, right? I look back at it now, I was like, that kind of sucked for other people. But for better or for worse, that's just, it was what it was for us. And I mean, it really did on any given night. You're talking about all these guys and girls that have gone on to national success on some level, but you're talking, Aaron Stevens, Nikki Rocks, Roxy Laveau, Chad Wicks, who is Chad Dick. You got Palmer Cannon, you got Ivar, you got Tommaso, you got Kofi, you got Biff Busick, you got John Walters, and I'm not even like a Fred Sampson, Fred Rosser, like Robert Stone. These are all people who just would work chaotic shows regularly while we were all cutting our teeth. And I'm missing tons of people.
I mean, I could throw some names. I could throw some names out there, but obviously, I do want to talk about the New England Five, which
the New England Five. What is you have to explain this?
This is them. This is what they're dubbed as. Technically, it's Donovan Dijak, Cam Sagagi, Anthony Green, Christian Casanova, and Josh Briggs. Because 4 of them were called up to WWE. Cam was not, and to me, those are and the 6th one. Those were sort of the pillars that were then pulled out and were really the recruits from WWE out of New England. And so you've wrestled all of them in later years before you went over to Ring of Honor, which we're going to get to. And I know you and Donovan Dijak had a pretty intense rivalry. I know that Cam and with AG, you guys had massive matches. I think, Christian Casanova was another one. And then Josh Briggs, was crazy too. So what was this like? Because this to me was very much, and I'm going to say this, almost you handing off the torch a little bit. And I say that from leaving New England and saying, this is me leaving chaotic, going to Ring of Honor, but this is your ball now, is how I viewed these matches.
I mean,
wrestling. I want to make that crystal clear because you went to Ring of Honor, but almost saying, hey, I'm now going to be doing Ring of Honor and you guys are now going to be running chaotic and you're going to carry the ball. That's how I viewed a lot of these matches.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, so I had the feud with Dijak, and there's this promo I cut on him, and I kind of talked about all of my friends who had gone on to do things, and all these people who have come after me gone to do things. And I always said Dijak was the best, and he really was of that new generation. And he still has unlimited, untapped potential to do big things in WWE, and it looks like he's going to get that chance finally. So, but yeah, I think Dijak had the most talent, most ability, and the size and the athleticism. Christian was a guy who, I'd said to him at one point, I go, man, if you ever stop messing around and get serious about this, the sky's the limit. And look what he's doing in NXT now. I think he's going to be a big star once he gets to the main roster. AG, I love. AG's the guy who, I think for a while he kind of got labeled like a good hand. And I don't know if he's still stuck with that label or not. But
AG said something on my show where, and I challenged him a little bit. He said, somebody said to him, you could be funny and you could be a little bit comedic and make a lot of money, or you could be a champion. And that's a very interesting discussion point on my show. And I was a younger interview when he would told me that. So I didn't pick up on it, but I was just listening to it. I'm like, man, there's 14 questions that I now have to think about, because great championships are fun, but if you're not making the most money and you're not selling the most
Yeah.
merch, what does a piece of gold really mean if you're not getting paid for it? Versus
Well,
saying
depends on what you want out of the business. Now, the
that
philosophies have
that's
changed
true.
over the years.
But I was saying to him like, you're a great wrestler, but he was saying that if I take this, retro AG gimmick versus being a more serious competitor, I could sell 3 to 4 times my merch. And all of a sudden now I can make a real living as a professional wrestler and then maybe work 15 hours in a gym and make real money.
Yeah.
And it's a real question, and I think it's a real question wrestlers have to actually really think, saying, what gimmick is going to allow me to, work as a full-time wrestler? Versus saying, do I have to have a day job? And, there's no right or wrong answer, but it's a very important question that I think people have to answer. And
Yeah.
really, really honest. Great interview. He got me Josh Briggs too. And obviously, it's a super interesting question, but that's why I call them the New England Five, because
Yeah.
these are the 5 guys who really took over, and were influential in Beyond. They were influential, in Limitless and Chaotic. And I mean, I think that they're now not the new generation, but they were the generation before. And I think you were the generation
Yeah.
before them. And that's what makes you so interesting, is that you also are still active. So it's so weird. Like,
Yeah.
it seems weird to talk about it, but
Yeah.
you're influential, I feel, because you handed the torch off. And I feel like you propelled a lot of these guys to some fashion into where they are right now.
Well, I crossed a lot of generations here, so I think of the kind of the generation that came before me, and it's like the Slick Wagner Brown, Luis Ortiz, Hurricane John Walters, Vince Vicalo sort of generation. And there's mine with me, Handsome Johnny, Tommaso, Max Bauer. And then now you got those guys that you just mentioned, all super talented, all should have gone on to bigger and better things. I think the one I probably had the most fun with, and it wasn't even like matches against him; it was teaming with him and beyond. Was Cam? Like I thought we had such a really cool thing, and I went and screwed it up, and I got signed by Ring of Honor, and I had to pull back on doing Beyond shows for a while. But I thought we had such a cool, fun thing going. I had a blast teaming with Cam, and the crowd hated us, so it was just fun messing with people. We did the King of Trios with Chris Dickinson. I forget what year that was now. That must have been like 2017, 2018, something in there. But just, yeah, Cam was a lot of fun to work
I
with.
love
He's definitely the one I had the most fun with.
I love Cam.
Cam's a good dude.
I thought Club Cam was the best thing and Beyond, because you know what is, he comes out, he has Bryce Donovan, he has Bobby Orlando, he's got a bunch of other people involved. He's Aaron Rourke gets involved, and then all of a sudden you have all of like and he's so asshole oriented, and it's so good. He plays it so good, and then he like is not. I mean, Cam's a good wrestler, but he doesn't even look like a wrestler, and then he's in a match, and you don't think he can wrestle, and then he gets the pin. Oh man, it was just he's a good wrestler. He's a better manager, and that's not
Yeah.
to diss him. He just knows how to be hated, and he knows how to make his team look good. But I digress right there, because I do want to talk about Ring of Honor, because there's the bouncers, and that's something that's fascinating. And you've had some crazy tag team matches, coast to coast, Leon Saint, Giovanni, and with him, obviously the Bullet Club with the Young Bucks, Cheeseburger is another one, Jay Lethal, Jeff Cobb, Red Titus, a bunch of other people, Dalton Castle's another one. I mean,
Yeah.
best friends in the Kingdom. I mean, the Kingdom, that's like what, Matt Taven, right?
Yeah, I mean, we wrestled them in 6-man tags, and then we wrestled TK Orion and Vincent and tag matches. But I mean, man, that was that's where you get spoiled in a place like Ring of Honor, because and this is not a knock on the indies, but like on the indies, you kind of don't know like who you're going to work, what you're going to work with. There's a lot of guys you're going to work with that are cutting their teeth, right? They're inexperienced. Um, you need to lead the charge a little bit. In a place like Ring of Honor, everybody that you're going to work with is a world-class performer who's at the peak of their, the peak of their game. So you have to bring it every night. You have to be on your game, and it certainly made me raise my game, and just made me a better performer. But yeah, I mean, the people that you talked about, I mean, the who's who of
Young
wrestling.
Enterprise, Kenny King, and MVP. I mean, Reno Scum Bear Country. I mean,
Yeah.
Bear Country. Bear Country is fantastic. And they're indie. And in a lot of ways, they were built in Beyond. But they were, I think, when they were at the top and Beyond, they were above the cut in a lot of ways, both as individuals and as a tag team. And then you get people like Chris Bay and Slice Boogie. I mean, Chris Bay is unbelievably talented as a singles wrestler, let alone,
Yeah.
that PJ Black was also there. And so, like, there's all these top people. And what was that like? Because that's really what I think is super cool about your career is that you've had this long career in chaotic and you did some crazy things, but now you're in a tag team and you're in one of the hottest tag team divisions in all of wrestling in Ring of Honor. And it was
Yeah.
a
I mean,
whole new career. It was like a brand new start for you in a lot of ways. That's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, because I was a singles guy, but so I kind of get the call from Ring of Honor, and that you want to talk about pressure, so I get the call or whatever, and like, hey, we think we have something for you long term, but or not long term, but like, hey, we think we got like something for you. So I wrestled Kenny King in Philadelphia, and then after the match, Kenny was feuding with Silas Young in the Bruiser. So after the match, like I joined them and we beat up Kenny. But I was told like, hey, we're going to try this out. But it literally was a show to show thing. It was like if this gets over, we'll keep rolling with it. If it doesn't get over, you'll be gone because the other two guys had contracts and I didn't. And fortunately, it got over. It got over to the point where um, I hadn't even signed a contract yet. And we main evented the ECW arena, with Silas against Cody Rhodes and the Bucks, and it was amazing. And that was like a week before the first All In. So it's something that worked, but at that point they had seen the potential in us, and so much so that they were like, "Hey, we actually think you guys are going to be a good babyface tag team." So I think it was 2 days of TV tapings maybe or something, and we did the first one, and the next time we come back, we're baby faces, and we start to get over. The crowd starts to get over. We start to come through the crowd. So we were somewhere in Florida, and things are going well for us, and we get pulled into a room by Bubba Ray Dudley and Joey Mercury, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna pull the trigger on you guys. Like, we're gonna make you you're gonna be the top babyface tag team, and that's gonna start tonight, and we're gonna start really pushing you hard." Now, it never sort of materialized. Like, we had this feud with the Kingdom that we won, and then regime changes and this and that. But we get to work with everybody. We get to work with, the Bucks. We get to work with Motor City Machine Guns. We get to work with the Briscoes multiple times. We get to work with Villain Enterprises. We get to work with the King. You listed it. I feel, it's funny that you mentioned Reno Scum and then Chris Bay. We did these. Those were enhancement matches. It was so weird. Ring of Honor used those teams, and Reno Scum had just come off of Impact, and they just sort of used them in these weird enhancement matches with us. And we're baby faces, and these dudes are like local guys. So it was like the weirdest environment because both those matches took place in Vegas, and it was friggin' weird, man. But yeah, we worked with, I mean, everybody, best friends. Very fortunate. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the it was Tag Wars where we worked with MVP and Kenny King teaming. So we got to do a lot of really cool things. Got to wrestle a lot of really
You need to
freaking good
talk about
wrestlers.
this because every wrestler has a bucket list. Every interviewer has a bucket list, and anybody who says they don't is just lying. Let's call it what it is, right? And
Yeah.
some things are just can't be done on your bucket list, but getting to wrestle Cody Rhodes, getting to wrestle the Young Bucks. I mean, if that's not on your bucket list and they're on the indies, you need to revise your bucket list. Even if you're a singles wrestler or a tag team or a trios, even to have a shitty match with them is still to have a match with them. Every wrestling fan wants to meet certain wrestlers and have cool stuff. I did not get to meet the Young Bucks. My parents did, but that's a different story for a different day. Great story. Great story. It's the weirdest thing, too. It was before a Ring of Honor match, too. Death Before Dishonor, I think in the Hammerstein Ballroom. They met them at a comic shop. Craziest, and Daniels and Kaz were there, which is even more ludicrous. They were signing a print that was $25, and there was 18 people in the comic shop. Craziest thing ever. You got arguably the 4, greatest tag team wrestlers in a room, and 18 people show up. Super cool. I couldn't make it out of final exam, so I sent my parents. I'm a real wrestling fan, guys.
There you go.
but enough about that. But some of these people had to be on your bucket list. I mean,
oh yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, when we first getting there, obviously the Bucks are on fire. So the Bucks definitely, Cody, especially once we were a trio and they were the 6-man tag champs. So yeah, we had our eyes on that, right from the beginning. One team that we were supposed to feud with, it's funny, like initially coming in, we form or whatever, and then we come back and we had another TV taping in Philly. And, now we've been told that we're going to feud with War Machine. Now I know because I'm close with Warbeard, that, well.
Oh, no. He pieced out. It's not good.
Yeah. So, yeah, they got signed and they were leaving, but they were on there. The Briscoes were definitely somebody that a team that we wanted to wrestle. I'm trying to think if there's a team there that would have been on that list that we didn't. I mean, from a singles perspective, the one that sticks out to me that I didn't get was Jay Lethal. Like that, that would have been that's probably the only match that I've ever politicked for in Ring of Honor my entire time there. That's probably the only thing I politicked for was a match with Lethal.
I think the only team you didn't face, and it might have been slightly before your time because my Ring of Honor timeline's a little messed up. Might have been Kaz and Daniels.
We wrestled Kaz and Scorpio Sky, but Daniels managed them that night.
Yeah, but he I mean, obviously in a 6-man tag team, SCU would have been great. But even just wrestling Scorpio Sky and Kaz with Daniels managing was pretty good too. But obviously I think a 6-man tag match between all of you would have been amazing in so many ways. But
yeah, we worked with everybody. To me that so we only broke through to a certain level in Ring of Honor. I think it definitely I thought we had a lot more potential to do a lot more, but it happens, right? Everybody thinks they can do more, but there's only so many spots. But the company did have a lot of faith in us because we worked with everybody. Even if we were just putting other teams over, like we worked with everybody. So I knew the company had faith in us, and I knew they trusted us because they, we were in there with the best of the best. There's very few people that I didn't work with.
And you had a cool match in NWA with Eli Drake and James Storm, too. That you can forget. And I consider that sort of part of Ring of Honor because I know that it's NWA, but even still, it had a very Ring of Honor feel to it, the match. And it was a very cool match. And what was that like? Because it's James Storm and Eli Drake. I mean, who's LA Knight, who's back now and was great in Impact. And that guy is gold. That guy is gold wherever he goes. And James Storm, obviously turned down an NXT contract, I think, or an opportunity just because he had some family stuff going on and he wanted to, I think, take care of his family and not be, in Florida or even on the road so much, which is interesting. But both those guys are amazing wrestlers and are fantastic.
James Storm. Yeah, James Storm's awesome guy too. Done a lot of shows with him and I thought, man, me and Bruiser pitched hard for James Storm to like join us as a trio in Ring of Honor, and they never went for it. But yeah, that match was a blast to work with those two guys. Eddie Kingston was involved with that angle too. Like we turned on Eddie Kingston. That NWA, that was so fun, man. That those tapings were a blast, especially when like you're putting together tag matches, and who do you get to lean on and ask questions to? Well, the friggin' Rock and Roll Express are there helping us put stuff together. So, but yeah, working with Drake and James Storm was a lot of fun. Drake's an interesting guy, Eli Drake, LA Knight. He's an interesting guy. I'm not going to pretend like I know him all that well, but yeah, he was a handful to put a match together with, but a good, solid guy who I enjoyed working with for sure.
And then there's one more match from Ring of Honor that I want to talk about, and that's the Dark Honor Rumble. And everybody was in this. And I don't know about you, but why don't you tell what that was like? Because there's something in that match, and it was in MSG. I think I'll say it. That's all I'm going to say on that because it's your match, but it was in Madison Square Garden, which is awesome for wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, that was so I never even stepped foot in Madison Square Garden before. And that was something I kind of promised myself when I got into business was I'm not going to go to Madison Square Garden until I'm booked. Now, I figured what would happen is I'd probably get booked as extra talent for WWE and work the Garden. But it was with Ring of Honor. I never imagined in a million years. I thought the dream of working Madison Square Garden had sailed already. And so, knew it was happening. Then we find out for sure we're going to be a part of it. And, so I get to the arena that day. I know we're just in the Rumble. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing in the Rumble. I figure I'm going to be in and out pretty quick. I didn't figure I was going to have anything featured. And then I get pulled aside and I get told like, hey, you got some feature spots. I got the big elimination of Coast to Coast. And then I knew I was doing something with Bad Luck Fale, which sucks because I think they had some bigger things in mind for matchups down the road. But whatever happened with the Ring of Honor and New Japan relationship, like it kind of soured after that. And then to get to do some stuff with Jushin Thunder Liger, like it's just, however brief it was, right? Like it was, a minute long, but forever. That's another one of those things I can put, a feather in my cap, man. Another highlight of my career. My other Super Bowl ring, so to speak, working Madison Square Garden and, getting to do something with Jushin Thunder Liger and that's his last Garden appearance ever in the final year of his career. So, just super, super friggin' cool. I was, it's one, I'm an emotional guy, but not like, not maybe the most sentimental at times. But so I get eliminated from that, and it was definitely like right. Whether you're wrestling in front of 17,000 people at Madison Square Garden or you're wrestling in front of 200 people at the PAV in Lowell, ultimately it's just wrestling, and it's your job to do, and you got to focus on it. But I definitely coming down the ramp at the Garden, I definitely took it in and looked around, and then after I got eliminated, I was leaning on the ring announcer table. And I just took a few extra minutes to just look up and look around and take it in. And actually, Kerry Silken, who's a great guy, great friend of mine, former owner of Ring of Honor, and a wonderful man. Love Kerry. He took a really cool picture of me because he was sitting at the table, where I'm just kneeling at the table and I'm sort of just taking it in. And then I get to the back and I just I went and found like a little just sort of corner of the world to myself and just like I cried my eyes out because it was something I never thought would happen. It was a dream I thought that had come and gone, and however small it was, however small part I was of that card, it meant the world, as I'm sure it did to a lot of people in that match, but it meant the world to me, especially to get to do to do things with some people I never thought I'd ever be in the ring with, Liger and Suzuki being the two that really stand out.
And obviously, to even go further into this, because obviously, this was being streamed and broadcasted, and obviously it was being recorded and it was live, which is super cool. But I don't think the concept of live wrestling and of streaming was in full effect as it is today. And so I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong at any point or challenge me, feel free to, but I think today now every, show is on IWTV or Fight, or it's a pay-per-view, or it's on Peacock or some other streaming service. And so I think that the idea of, this is almost television ready is a good example that I like to use. And I don't think that mentality was in wrestling at the time, even despite you being live and being broadcasted. So now I think there's a different mentality. But even so, what was that like? Because obviously, I mean, the moment is living with you, and it's on.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to explain that to somebody beyond
Yeah.
that. But the moment for you was very special, but you can rewatch it and it lives forever now. And we're in that
Yeah.
age. And, it's one of the things about interviews is that I've had some very cool interviews with people, and some of the people that I've interviewed are no longer with us, but that interview lives forever. And so that voice of that person is living forever, and people can enjoy it, and I can enjoy that time. But obviously, when I was recording, it's a different emotion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the moment, it's, you have a job to do, right? That's why, like, I was just so, I think about, the moments I took afterwards, and that was all the emotion I had pent up and swallowed down and held at bay because, like, again, that's my job, right? So, as cool as that moment was, I have a job to do. Like, Ring of Honor is paying me to do a job. That's my job. My job, it's a very cool job, right? My job that night was to wrestle live in front of the world in Madison Square Garden and the biggest show in Ring of Honor history. No matter how the emotions that I'm feeling or the personal feelings that I'm having or what it means to me personally, what comes first and foremost with pro wrestling is this is our job, and I have a job to do. And no matter how big or small a part they wanted me to play that night, like that's what my job was. Now, I mean, for Ring of Honor, man, it's funny. Like, our TV tapings were all taped and pre-recorded, but everything else was live streamed on Honor Club. So everything we had no house shows anymore. Like, for the last few years I was there, everything we did except for the TV tapings was pay-per-view or traditional pay-per-view. So it was always like the pressure was on, right? And um, that's why the pandemic era is so weird, where we were wrestling in empty arenas and stuff because
We're,
you
we're
could
gonna
just
talk too.
yeah, you could just reshoot stuff. But yeah, when the cameras are live, when the fans are live, that's what makes pro wrestling, the greatest entertainment in the world. There's one take. That's it. You get one take, and you get it right or you get it wrong.
It's very interesting because one of the things, in my opinion, and again, feel free to challenge me because I'm just a fan, and slightly, I think I'm a mark or a smark or whatever you want to call it, because obviously I'm an interviewer, so I need to have knowledge and I speak to a lot of people and I need to be educated to some degree. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is that I think the COVID era made wrestling and streaming and social media more important than anything else
Mm,
in wrestling, because I think being seen and not heard, or not being pre-taped and then thrown onto a network, is, detrimental. I think that if you're on a show that's pre-taped and then it comes out, it doesn't have the same impact as if it's
yeah,
live streamed. And, we look at Beyond and Wrestling Open. I tune in on Thursdays. Now, Thursdays are my night off because I come home from my job. I'm tired. I pour myself something to drink, and then I watch wrestling to calm down for my week, because I don't have to show up in my office on Fridays, which is nice. But if it was pre-taped, I wouldn't care as much. But the
yeah,
fact that it's live, and so I'm very curious your opinion on that, because even when there was no audience, if it was live, I viewed it more important than if it wasn't. And I feel like the COVID era, you know, sort of proved that and showed that you're gonna pre-tape it. I don't give a damn about it.
yeah, yeah. I think there's something to when you are watching something live, right? I think it does add something special. It makes it feel more important. And I think, when you think of, like, with pro wrestling, we know it's entertainment, but the presentation is sports, right? So nobody watches a football. I mean, I don't know, maybe some people do, but usually if you watch a football game or a baseball game, right? People aren't watching the World Series on DVR; they're watching it live, and there's something to that. And I think wrestling. I think you're right about wrestling. I think having that product come live to you, and it adds. I think for the performers. Now, wrestling, right? Even if it's taped, it's usually taped in front of fans, So there is a live aspect to that, for us as well. But when the cameras are on, there's, when there, there's, I think of, Ring of Honor, obviously much smaller than something like WWE, but you think of like a Monday Night Raw or whatever, right? There's 15,000 people in the arena, but through the camera, there's, 1.5 million. So it adds
It's
pressure. It adds something to it.
Yeah, let's even dive into that, and we'll use Wrestling Open as an example. Now, Wrestling Open and Beyond is weird because some stuff they do is pre-taped, like Bish at the Beach was pre-taped, but then they have other things, and the only reason why it was pre-taped is that you're on a beach, and if you try to film on a beach, I'm just saying it's a little
Yeah.
hard, and they learn that the hard way because when it's 95 degrees out, let's just say electronics don't work well, but one of the things is that, obviously, there are more people watching Beyond Wrestling every Thursday than are at the arena.
Yeah.
For sure. And the real money is in the stream. It's not in the tickets. They charge $10 because they don't make their money on the seating. They don't. They make their money because they're streaming it. And they make their money because they get a certain amount of views, and they're doing better than a lot of other promotions are. And maybe IWTV made a mistake. But that's going to get you and me both in trouble. But I think it's pretty clear that you shouldn't have taken uncharted territory away from the Northeast, is all I'm going to say. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I got you, man.
The ratings are speak for themselves. They do. Wrestling Open beat out Uncharted Territory in ratings.
Yeah, I think Beyond is built, it's funny, like, right, Wrestling Open's its own thing, but it's Beyond Wrestling, right? And Beyond has built such a following and such a especially here in the New England area, like those crowds were. I remember the days kind of before pandemic when, like, man, these buildings were jammed out, man. Like, I forget the little place down in Rhode Island, not FET. There was another like little nightclub that we ran, you couldn't walk in the damn place. I'm surprised it didn't get shut down for fire code. And it just, yeah. I think Wrestling Open, they got something great.
Let me ask you a question about this, because this is my take on Beyond.
Yeah.
Is that I trust Beyond, if that makes any sense. So
Yeah.
I look at a company, and I'm actually not going to name the company. There's another company that I don't trust them. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel like they're going to put on a good product. I trust H2O, Matt Tremont's company, where I've watched enough of it. I know Matt Tremont's work. I know what he's done. I know a bunch of wrestlers there. I trust it. I feel comfortable. And I think that's what Beyond has done, is that they have built a trust between Uncharted Territory, several shows for years, and then a bunch of other stuff. And I think that's why Wrestling Open works. Also, I think it works because it's 10-minute matches. And let's be realistic. Sometimes a match sucks, and you don't want it to go on for 30 minutes. And sometimes two people are just not working. And sometimes you need a 5-minute match, and you have a draw, and that's fantastic. And so that's why I think Wrestling Open works, is that it's trust, and it's also my attention span isn't that big. It's not that big.
Yeah.
And so,
well, wrestlers need filters sometimes, right? We have all the ideas in the world, and every wrestler for every match could probably think of an hour worth of stuff to do, but sometimes those time constraints are really good because it filters the wrestlers. But yeah, I think what you're hitting on is, with the trust that you have in Beyond, is just the brand they've built, because they've put on quality shows for so long that it's right there. It's like, people who are loyal to a sneaker brand or whatever, it's like, this is quality. I know whatever they're going to put on is going to be good. And that's the brand that Beyond Wrestling, and now with Wrestling Open, that they've built. Like, Drew knows what he's doing. Drew is a friggin' super smart guy. I think Beyond for a while now has been probably the number one promotion in New England.
The top two indie companies are GCW and Beyond. And if you're a wrestler, you either want to be in GCW or you want to be in Beyond. and maybe you want to be in Prestige, I think is West Coast or something or like that. I forget its true name, but those are really the three in the entire. And then if you're a deathmatch wrestler, you want to be in H2O or ICW, no holds bar. There are 5 promotions that every wrestler really wants to be in on the indie scene. And I don't consider Ring of Honor to be indie. And I don't think most people do either. I think Ring of Honor is, like an Impact in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they were. I mean, Ring of Honor were definitely not indie. They were, now they're owned by another billionaire, Tony Khan. But the era that I was in, we were owned by Sinclair Broadcasting, which is one of the largest media conglomerates in the world. People don't realize Sinclair Broadcasting could comfortably buy WWE. We were backed by a gigantic corporation, and we had deep pockets and plenty of money. The reason why Ring of Honor doesn't exist in the form that it was anymore is because of the pandemic, right? Because of the pandemic, the parent company Sinclair Broadcasting lost money, and somewhere in an office in wherever their offices are, Ring of Honor was a red line item on a spreadsheet that they had, like, hey, we got to cut budget. I think it was an easy cut. But no, Ring of Honor to me was not an independent. There's two. I think when you have that much money behind something, I don't know that you can consider it an independent. If like somebody that'd be like right now if a big corporation came in and bought GCW and ran it like Ring of Honor was, then to me they wouldn't be independent. It'd be the same thing.
I'll throw a comic name out there for people who know comics. Zenescope. Zenescope is not an independent company. When you have an offer for somebody who wanted to buy your company for over $20 million, it's not an independent company anymore. It can operate like an independent company, but it's not an indie company, if that makes any sense. But
yeah,
I digress, because I do want to talk about Beyond before I let you go. And there's 2 matches that I want to talk about. And one of these people scares the shit out of me, Max Teller. Max the Impaler, scary as fuck. And I don't understand Max the Impaler, but all I know is that Megan Bain slayed Max the Impaler, and I don't know how Megan did it. And I don't know how you did it and survived that match, but 2 big people going at it. That was a horse fight.
Yeah, I loved having the chance to wrestle Max. So that was a carryover from Ring of Honor, and that was something I had really pitched hard to Beyond, because I thought it was something cool we could do. It was a carryover from another company that had national exposure, and I mean Max is a badass, it's the only real intergender wrestling I've ever done. But the thing about Max is they match up to me from a physical standpoint. Like, Max is physically imposing and a complete badass. I thought we could have done a lot more than just have sort of the one match that we ended up having. But I don't know, schedules didn't line up, and for whatever reason it didn't line up. But
I also felt that the match was nice because it wasn't on Wrestling Open or on a traditional Beyond show. It was on what I call a Beyond event, because it's not a review anymore. But Beyond does stuff, and I feel like it was on Beyond Monkey Business, or I don't know exactly how to say it, but MUNKY, and I felt that it's more meaningful because the traditional Wrestling Open rules don't apply, and other things don't apply, and so you have a lot more freedom. And I call it a Beyond event or a Beyond PP.
Oh, we just beat the hell out of each other. That was what freedom was. We beat the snot out of each other. I was sore as hell after that.
you get what I'm going with.
Yeah, I got
it's more special, if that makes any sense, where it's the idea that, hey, this is not continuity, for lack of a better word, or this is meant to be a grudge settling thing. And that was cool. And then I just enjoyed the match. I thought it was fun. And I thought that just let people go at it. Let these 2 big people fight. It's the nicest way I can say it.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought this was great storytelling, was Ichiban, Brad Hollister, and, Brad having his issues with Ichiban. And let's be realistic. You have a small aerial fighter against a big horse type guy who is a powerhouse, heavyweight. And it's a great match. It was a main event. You got Brad Hollister on the apron. And what was that match like? Because that was just a fantastic storytelling match. I felt like, honestly,
Yeah.
the real key to that match wasn't wrestling ability. It was storytelling. And that's what I
Yeah.
want to see with wrestling sometimes is you could have two okay wrestlers in a ring, but if they're telling a real fun story, that's something that like is entertaining. And I think that's what people forget in wrestling is sometimes you don't need 40 flips and acrobatic stuff. You just need a story. And that's to
Yeah.
me what that was. And I thought it was an excellent example of how to do it.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, it was. It's the classic story in wrestling, right? David versus Goliath. Ichiban, who I wasn't super familiar with before that match got scheduled, super impressed with Ichiban and what he can do. But yeah, I think it really was. It was about storytelling. It was about the bullying aspect, which was that was a fun promo. I really enjoyed cutting that promo on Ichiban. But the match was super fun. I mean, when you have somebody that athletic, that skilled, um, I think it was easy to put together, easy to execute the match in the manner that we did, and we told a really fun. I think we told a really fun story. So I hope it's not the last. I hope it's not the last time I worked with Ichiban, and hopefully not the last time I'll be at Wrestling Open either.
Yeah, no, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought that it was brilliant, and I thought that it was a lot of fun. I thought Brad Hollister was a great manager. I thought how he said he had a manager's license was brilliant. I thought there was so much stuff in there, and also bring somebody in like you into this because I think this was technically your first Wrestling Open as well, and I think
Mhm.
that it was a lot of fun. I thought that also there was a lot of clout being brought in, and again, it actually meant something. I feel. And I was like, cool, I'll tune in tonight. And I'm now curious what the hell is going to happen with this match. And so I just thought it was great. And even what was it like for you? Because Wrestling Open, as I sort of stated before, is the place to be right now, along with GCW and a few other promotions. And even if you'd only get onto Wrestling Open once, because not everybody gets on Wrestling Open, you almost have to earn your spot there. I mean, I'm having CPA on, tomorrow night and not everybody gets on. I had Landon Hale on. I've had Armenian Chaos on. I've had a few other people I'm trying to get Ray Jazz on, and not everybody gets on Wrestling Open. People have been turned away. And so even to have a spot, let alone the main event, it's kind of a big deal, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's really cool, and they always show me a lot of respect. That's the one thing I'll say about Beyond and Worker Wrestling Open, and Drew and his team. So to bring me in, I hadn't been there, but they were relying on the fact that people knew who I was, and they treat me with a lot of respect and have a lot of respect for what I can do. So, yeah, I was excited to be there. Hopefully I'll be back again soon. I'm only a hop, skip, and a jump away from Worcester, so you never know when I'll pop up again at Wrestling Open. But
Well,
it is. I love what they're building. I love what they're building there. I love what they're doing. It's tough to, they're in the same building every week, on the same network every week or whatever, the app or whatever, and you don't see a lot of. There's not really any other independent companies doing that right now. They're the innovators of that on the independent level. So kudos to them.
it's consistency, and there's one match that I think you need to book there, and they need to book, and it's after Tyree Taylor deals with everything he has to deal with. I think the two of you, in a horse fight, give you guys 20 minutes. I think it's a great match. I really do. I think that you just have a horse fight, you lax the rules a little bit, and you have a good time. And I think it'll be a great match. That's what I'm going for. And if they want to steal it and they want to book that, I think the audience would be into it.
Yeah.
I think the two of you would put on a hell of a match, and that's what I want. And if I can book a match, that's that. And the other match that I would book is not in Beyond, but if Beyond wants it, I'll love to book that match. Masha Slam versus Kennedy Copeland in a death match at a
There you
Beyond
go.
show or an H2O show, because there you go. Those two women will tear it up. And I
Just
said,
let me and Tyree wrestle before the death match.
oh, no. You'll wrestle on Wrestling Open. I don't want a death match between the two of you because I would like the ring to stay intact. I would much prefer the ring to stay intact. I do not think Kennedy Copeland and Masha Slamovich would destroy the ring. I don't know about the two of you guys. So I'm going to say that as politely as I can say it without getting...
We're big guys. We're big, handsome guys.
I think the ring is going to have to be reinforced, is my point.
Yeah, hell yeah.
It's a super horse fight is how it's going to be labeled. And they just need to have the graphic ready to go right in and like spin it like a John Cena spinner belt, and then off it goes. But enough about that, about what I want, because I don't have any control here. But if they want to steal the idea, I'm more than happy to sponsor that event.
Cool.
If I get the main event, all they got to do is mention my podcast, and I'll be thrilled. But only Rich can mention my podcast. I do not want anybody else. No Sam Latourna. I want Rich Palladino to mention my podcast. Because in a tux, it'll be great. But anyway, nothing against Sam. I love her too, but nothing against her. But I want Rich in the tux because that's the type of show we run here.
Yeah, classic.
But enough about that because I don't want to keep you here all day. I did say an hour, a little bit over, but I don't think you mind too much. But I do want to give you a chance to self-promote yourself. Where could people find you, bother you, hit you up, buy your merch? I know you have a pro wrestling tee shop, which is in the description up above, down below, or to the side. Not too sure where, but all that fun stuff because, as I stated, you need to support and financially support wrestlers.
Yeah. So if you'd like a T-shirt, if you're so inclined, big fan of mine. BrianMilonas.com is my pro wrestling tees. I bought the domain name. All pro wrestlers should do that, by the way. It's like $20 for 2 years. But BrianMilonas.com. I have a new Christmas T-shirt that'll be debuting in a couple of weeks here. So we'll keep being on the lookout for that. You can find me on social media. I've been really into trying to build my TikTok, following up, having a good time with that. So you can follow me on TikTok at Brian Milonas, on Twitter at Brian Milonas, on Instagram at Brian Milonas KP. And if you're still somebody who's on Facebook, which I barely go on there, I'm on there as well. So
and I kind of tipped my hat a little bit just 25 seconds ago, but I'm going to tip it again. You have to support and you have to financially support wrestlers. And what that means is going to shows that they're on, going to promotions that they're involved in. Obviously, if they have merch on that, buying their merch, whether you buy it on the internet or at a show, because obviously everybody's a different type of wrestling fan, where some people are more internet-based, some people are more in shows. You might be a fan of Beyond, but you might live in Wisconsin. So, you can buy people's merch on the internet. Furthermore, you should be following people on social media, tweeting at them and engaging with them. And because I guarantee you that if you tweet at a bunch of wrestlers on the indies, a bunch of them will respond back to you. And it's always cool. It's always cool when you're engaging with people. And I said that you're like a husky Ferrari. I said that. I thought that was a funny thing. You're something to that effect. I thought it was pretty funny. But I said,
yeah.
I put up the gift of a Ferrari like spinning out. It was very funny. I didn't know how you were going to take that, by the way.
I loved it. I laughed my ass off. I saw that like 5 minutes after the match because that's what we do as pro wrestlers in 2022. We go to the back, we grab our phones, and we see if anybody's talking about us. And I laughed my ass off while I was still breathing heavy from the match.
It's always a risk because I've had it gone the other way, and people have gotten upset at me, and I'm like, my bad.
Man.
But I digress right there. But again, I thought it was pretty funny. You're like, oh man, because you tweeted back at me. I thought it was pretty funny, and that's how this all started. But my point is that it does make a big difference when you actually engage with a wrestler, and tweeting is free. As it currently sits, and it doesn't.
Right now it is.
Right now it is. I mean, it might be $8 a month soon enough, but that's not the point here. And we will all pay for it. We will all pay for it. You can count on that. But I digress right there. But one of the things is that I think that, obviously, it doesn't cost anything to tweet and engage with your favorite wrestlers. Furthermore, that's the other thing too, is just my show. I'm going to promote myself because it is my show. All my social media is down below. It's Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Pop Anime Comics on Instagram, Pop Anime Comics on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube, Pop Anime Comics. I have almost 600 plus interviews across so many sectors, comics, wrestling, anime, voice acting, video game stuff, authors, wrestlers, obviously, you name it, and you can watch all that stuff for free. And so obviously that's what's going on. If you want ad space, I also offer that on this show too. So if anybody's looking to advertise anything, you're more than welcome to do that. If you would like to buy me a coffee, you can do that as well, but it is not necessary anybody. But again, that's typically how I sell ad space. And that's all my stuff. And I do have a cool t-shirt on Redbubble. It's this right here. So you can go check that out. And that's everything I got going on. So that's everything I have. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
Cool. Yeah, just want to say thanks for having me. And again, I love the tweet. I love interacting with people. So looking forward to many more matches here coming up, and hopefully a lot more in Wrestling Open. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, I don't think I could top that, and that is a wrap, everybody.
Cool.